All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. My name is Marissa Adams, and I'm the marketing specialist here at Trace Security. And today I have here with me Evan Royer, who is one of our information security analysts, and he's going to be talking to you guys about internal network security. Evan is our internal penetration testing service owner, which means he's in charge of our testing process and the development of testing techniques as new attack methods surface. And if y'all have any questions during the webinar, you can email them to Evan, and his email address is eroyer@tracesecurity.com, or put them in the chat window. So, all right, take it away, Evan.
Hey, how's everyone doing today? I just want to thank everyone for, tuning in today to, hear me talk about these things that we find are very detrimental to improving, one's internal network security. A little bit about me, kind of where I'm from, a little bit of my background. I received a bachelor's degree in information security from Champlain College. After my schooling was complete, I figured I want to, try to better my opportunities. And so I decided, let's pick up and move down south. And that's where I found Trace Security. Here in Louisiana, where Trace Security is located, we have 4 seasons here. Crawfish season, hurricane season, football season, and then the summers, which are so hot and so humid that you can't even go outside. A little bit different from our spring, summer, fall, and in winter up in Vermont. So big change, but great opportunities down here. And I'm just so thankful that, I found Trace Security and I'm able to, pursue my passion in offensive security here. I love researching primitives, combining these primitives to create unique attack chains, and really just bringing that to our team here, finding ways we can infiltrate new networks and systems, and then bringing that to our clients in the form of internal penetration tests, delivering, full comprehensive reports, giving our clients a way they can actually remediate these issues and recognize them. So kind of moving into what we're going to be covering today. We're going to identify a couple common dangerous malpractices that we see, on a routine basis. These items lead to trivial, quick compromise. By remediating and mitigating these items, you're going to be much less vulnerable to malware attacks, the spread of malware, any type of bad actors or threats that seem to pose impact to your network. These are kind of limit the exposure that those areas and the things they're going to be able to exploit. So by kind of following along, I'm going to demonstrate a couple of these attacks. You're going to be able to see kind of from an attacker point of view what these tools look like, both on the user side and the attacker side. By no means are these 2 or 3 items a comprehensive list of things you need to accomplish to secure your internal network, but they will definitely help reduce that impact that an attacker or malicious program is able to do, and the things they're able to compromise on your internal network. So for each demonstration, I'm going to kind of give, an insight of what these tools look like, how an attacker or malicious program would look, and what systems they would search for, and kind of just how quick and quiet these attacks are. It's going to help your organization train personnel on what to look for, build rules in your security appliances to recognize these attacks. Just giving your security team the ability to hunt for these primitives and kind of identify, detect, and respond to them in a timely manner. You're going to be able to update policies, procedures, hardening guidelines, which at the end of the day is going to reduce that overall attack space and increase, that internal network security. No one wants any phishing attacks to come their way, and we hope that these attackers can never break our external perimeter. But if they do, if these steps are not taken to mitigate, these quick compromise items, you're going to be in trouble. So kind of just look at these attacks as I go through them. This will give you the insight on how the attackers think and how you can ultimately defend against them. So I'm going to be looking at 3 abuse cases or attack methods. The first is going to be name service poisoning. The second is going to be IPv6 abuse cases, and the third is going to be NTLM relay. So the name service poisoning attacks, for computers to talk to each other, they need a means to find each other. This is accomplished via what we call name service protocols. We're going to be looking at how an attacker can abuse these legacy protocols to leverage trivial access to your systems, passwords, and your sensitive data. For the IPv6 abuse case, we're going to kind of look at, why it's typically overlooked and how it's abused and how, attackers can gain access to your passwords, emails, and leverage your data. And then the third attack is going to take these first two attacks and kind of put them all together, and we're going to kind of look at when perfect storms collide and kind of demystify this NTL and relay attack and the real dangers of why this attack needs to be addressed. And the only reason I bring these three attacks up opposed to other attacks is just the fact that how commonly these are present on our networks. It's a combination of default configurations. It's a combination of vulnerable software, and it's just these legacy protocols existing on your network. And by not identifying them properly, that, like I said before, this gives attackers and malicious programs an easy way to compromise your entire network very quickly. So coming out of this, you're going to be able to go to sleep at night and say, okay, attackers and malicious programs are not going to be able to take advantage of these items, and I'm not going to wake up to a ransomware attack in the morning. So without further ado, let's move into these attacks. Before I do that, I would like to talk about least privilege and password posture a little bit. The only reason I bring these items up before I go into the attacks is, combined with these items are not applied properly within your organization, combined with these attack vectors, the impact is much more detrimental. So let's kind of move into those items. Give people access only to what they need. So from a network administrator sense, you're only going to give your employees access to the data that they need, the file shares that they need. You don't want to give them overprivileged access to systems and services. You only want to, if you promote a least privilege model, if an attacker is able to get on your network and compromise one of these accounts, let's say, I don't know, an HR representative, they're only going to be able to act under the privileges and areas that HR representative has been given access to. So by limiting that exposure, you limit the impact of the attack. Let's prevent everyone as an administrator model. So kind of what I was speaking to before, make sure that no privileged accounts are being utilized on any machines or areas on the network where they do not need to be. If you're a network administrator, you shouldn't be using, an account to do normal tasks through your daily routine. Like, you shouldn't be using an administrative account to access email or do just mundane jobs that don't require that privileged access. And then at the end of the day, passwords. I know everybody gets talked to. You need complex passwords. You need to enforce complexity. And we just want to drive home how important this is. Limit your make minimum character requirements, at least 10 characters, enforce complexity, make sure that there's a proper lockout threshold enforced. And by applying these concepts, you're going to mitigate the impacts of the three attacks I'm about to go over. So I'm going to bring up this slide. So let's pretend that I'm a malicious actor or a malicious program, and I say, okay, what do I need to access first? What's going to get me farther in the network? What is going to get to my goal? How am I going to steal the data? How am I going to access these systems? Well, I need access. I need usernames. I need passwords. I need to be able to search through sensitive files. So these bad actors and malicious programs need legs to stand on, and quick legs. So these three attack vectors are what they're gonna are more than likely what they're gonna target first, just because of how widespread these issues are. I only say that because of experience on the hundreds of networks I've entered, and just seeing these common vulnerabilities and attack chains, I guess, for lack of a better word. How really dangerous they are and risky they are, and pose a threat to your business. The first thing I'm going to identify is name service poisoning. Kind of as I mentioned before, this kind of works with if one computer needs to talk to another computer, it's going to say, okay, where is this computer on the network? It's going to do three items. First, it's going to query the DNS server. So when I say DNS server, let's assume that no one here knows what a DNS server is. So it's called a domain name server. Essentially, that holds all the addresses. Essentially, let's call it an atlas map. So let's say I'm PC1. I'm just going to push you into the next slide here. Let's say I'm PC1 and I want to access file server 1. I'm trying to access this data for my normal job function. I typed the name wrong, or the underlying services misconfigured the name. For some reason, this computer does not exist. So this PC1, as you can see here, reaches out to the DNS server, which holds all of our addresses, the roadmaps to the other computers on the network, and it is not in that atlas, so to say. So they send a message back to PC1, and it says, I don't know where that is. So PC1 then sends a message to every single computer on that network and says, hey, I'm file server 1. You should send me your credentials so you can access me. In this sense, us as the attacker is going to be able to take advantage of that message that was sent to everyone, and we're able to stand up and say, hey, hello, I'm your file server 1, come connect to me. At that point, the computer sends that authentication mechanism, which is a hash, to the attacker in attempts to gain access to that system that it's looking for. The attacker just simply sends back an error packet. So what is a hash, I guess, before we move forward? A hash is simply a mathematical equation that masks or protects your plain text password. So without your plain text password, you're not able to access. If an attacker got a hold of a hash, they're not able to access your email or your file systems simply based on this hash. They need to crack that hash. So I'm just going to kind of run through what this attack looks like from top to bottom in a live demo, show you how we're going to capture the hash, and then just how trivial it is to crack that hash with some common tools. Okay, so what I'm showing you here is we're going to have two systems. We all wish technology worked perfect. So here we have two systems. On the right, we have, let's say his name's Bob Thomas. He is looking for file server 2, as we previously mentioned. Okay, so he comes here and he logs on in the morning and he says, all right, I need to access file server 1 to do my job. Us as an attacker uses a tool called Responder to capture and take advantage of these legacy protocols and essentially perform the name service poisoning attack. So how they're going to do this, so it looks like this. And so as you can see, Bob Thomas says, okay, let's go access file server 1. And as you can see, we're already getting these legacy protocols over here on the left, which should be disabled, but there's a lot of networks that they simply are not disabled. And that's why we're addressing this here. So as you can see here, we're getting all these poison responses. At this point, it prompts the user for credentials, and we don't even need to answer this prompt to gain the hash. We've actually already captured it, but just as a proof of concept, we go test here. Says, okay, this is the error message I was talking about. I say, okay, here's the error, and we come over here. So at this point, we've captured the hash. So how do we crack this hash, and what does it look like? Give me 1 second. So this is the program hashcat here. So this is our initial hash that we captured so when we search for file server 1, it sends back those authentication mechanisms, which sends back the hash. This is what it looks like, all this gobbledygook up here. What hashcat is doing here is taking that hash and is trying a bunch of passwords against it, common passwords, password 1, password 2. So attackers will take these common word lists and run them against your hash, which is supposed to be protected or masked. So as you can see here, hashcat was able to crack this password in a matter of seconds. Although it was password 2, with an @ symbol, it's still, it's very, very dangerous. And I'm pretty sure either some users in this room or they know some of the company, they're using C's in the year or the company in the year. Any passwords that 8 characters or less can be cracked in a trivial amount of time. NTLM hashes actually with advanced equipment, all 8-character passwords with enforced complexity can actually be cracked within 2.5 hours. So it's a scary thing. So these masked hashes, don't fool you, they can be cracked. So what can an attacker do once he gets those plain text values, those passwords? They can now take the username and take that plain text password, and they can access multiple file systems on the network. They can access the email. They can move to other computers. There's just a number of things you can do once you obtain these plain text values. So by kind of reducing these legacy protocols and these name service protocols that are causing these issues in your organization is going to really reduce the impact that these malicious programs and attackers have once they get into your internal network. So, as you can see, this whole attack took a matter of, 2 or 3 minutes, and it's not going to take a malicious program or a bad actor or even an inside malicious employee to go and gain these password values, gain these hashes. At the very least, you don't want your coworkers reading your emails. So, enforce those password standards, make those passwords at least 10 characters, complexity, and that's going to reduce the impact of this attack. And again, going back to the least privilege concept, if Bob Thomas only has access to 3 documents and they are not sensitive, this attack again is stopped. So just kind of want to reinforce those least privilege concepts. In addition to removing these legacy protocols from your network is going to reduce the impact of this kind of attack. I'm going to pull back into my slide here. 1 second. So kind of just to go over what we just looked at again, just want to bring us back to this diagram. So essentially what's happening, as you saw here, Bob Thomas, he said, okay, let's go look for file server 1. The DNS server was not available. I was able to pick up the hash as the attacker, and I was able to crack that. I was able to crack that hash and gain the plain text values. So as I mentioned before, the impact is pretty detrimental. I'm able to gain further access to other file systems, the user's emails, things of that nature. Not something you want on your internal network. It's coming from multiple perspectives. Threat actors could use this, like advanced persistent threat actors, internal employees, and again, malicious programs, ransomware. No one likes that word. So, let's try and get, limit the use of these legacy protocols on your network. By applying these best practices. You're going to want to disable NetBIOS and local link multi-network resolution protocols. That can be accomplished via group policy, registry, or manually in the network adapter settings. You can also rope these into your hardening guidelines. And again, I can't stress enough, you really got to have your security teams and your security third parties, anyone that's doing your internal security testing, to hunt for these primitives. Say, okay, are you guys looking for name service poisoning? Have you guys made sure these legacy protocols are disabled? Because as you saw before, it's just the impact is so high, and it's just such a quick compromise, and it really is easy to mitigate. And so, just nailing home to your security team and those people testing these issues is very, very important. Let's go ahead and move into our next attack. Common IPv6 abuse cases. So let's talk about IPv6 for a second. It stands for Internet Protocol version 6. Kind of what most people use is Internet Protocol version 4, especially on your internal network. Internet Protocol version 6 was rolled out as a way to combat everyone using too many addresses on the internet. So as more devices get added, more people pick up cell phones, things of that nature. IPv6 had to be implemented as a means to give more addresses to everyone. So as it was implemented, the Windows operating systems from Windows Vista and above, I guess, kind of assumed that everyone was going to start using IPv6. And they made it so that all hosts on the network are going to prefer IPv6 over IPv4. Why is this dangerous? Well, kind of as I mentioned before, your DNS server is going to give out, those IPv6 and IPv4 addresses to the people on your internal network, computers, devices, any type of IoT devices. And if you're only utilizing IPv4, this gives an attacker the ability to come in and take over that IPv6 space. And by default, all those Windows operating systems from Vista and above are going to prefer that IPv6 over IPv4. So if you've taken the time to limit those legacy name service protocols and you say, okay, I've mitigated that, I'm not vulnerable to that, I should be okay, right? Not yet. So you need to make sure you're checking for IPv6 as well. So if this just goes untouched, the default configuration is on your network, it says, okay, I'm able to come in as an attacker and take over that space and drive traffic back to me, as I kind of previously pointed out in my first attack. This is done through, it can be done through a couple of ways, but the most common way is sending out a fake IPv6 router advertisement to everyone on the network. And so certain devices, especially Windows devices, as I keep beating with a hammer, Windows Vista and above, are going to respond to that router advertisement and enter that entry into their table. So the attacker is now able to force these devices to bring their traffic to us, essentially. So we're able to take the authentication mechanisms and get the hashes, get the password values, things of that nature. So again, I'm just going to give you a quick demo of how that what that looks like. So again, we have our Windows 7 host, B Thomas, pretty simple, pretty cut and dry. Then we have our Ubuntu server, which is our attacker box, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and just look at how easy this attack is to pull off. So I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna pretend I'm attacker segment.local, and I'm gonna target this system I'm trying to attack. So let me just put these next to each other so you guys can see this a little better. My apologies. Okay. Why can't I see it? Okay, so again, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty, so I can just kind of again talk through the way this attack works. So the implications are the same as we kind of mentioned earlier. After I'm able to kind of spoof those DNS entries, which is essentially I'm saying, okay, I'm the Atlas now. I know, the things that everyone, I'm the things that everyone, I'm the places, I'm the place that people come to find the other computers and hosts and users on the network. And so I'm able to take over those DNS entries and force the authentication to me. So again, these are some things you're going to want to mitigate. It's very easily solved. We're going to go into kind of our best practices here for that. And it's simply going to be, you want to prefer IPv4 over IPv6. So we're kind of looking at, how are we gonna accomplish this? We're gonna want to prefer that IPv4 address over IPv6. How is this going to be accomplished? It's going to be via group policy, registry entries, as I mentioned before, and just confirming that these are in all your hardening guidelines. Your security testing is just extremely important. You're going to be able to communicate that to management, all your IT people, and of course your security companies that are testing each of these things. So like, as I mentioned before, the impacts are going to be the same. You're going to be able to get that hash value. You're going to be able to crack those passwords and gain access to additional systems. So let's talk about kind of when perfect storms kind of collide. So we've taken care of name service poisoning. We've taken care of the IPv6 issues. There's kind of a third issue I want to bring in here. It's called NTLM relay. What is NTLM relay? Essentially, we're able to take those authentication sessions that we were able to provoke those other systems on the network and drive the traffic back to us. We're able to take those authenticated sessions and forward them to other systems on the network. So in that instance, what you're able to do is you don't simply just gain the hash, you're able to forward the session. So there's no need to crack the password. That's extremely important because if the company's enforcing good password standards, they're not able to, the attacker isn't able to crack that password. They're not able to get anywhere, again, limiting the impact. And so what this NTLM relay attack does is it allows the attacker to, instead of just getting that hash and stopping the attack there, they're then able to take those sessions and push them at other computers on the network. So if least privilege is not being properly enforced, an administrator tries to access a system on the network, and I'm on the network and I'm able to say, okay, I'm your IPv6 server, send that traffic to me. I'm able to utilize this NTLM relay technique to go ahead and forward those sessions to other computers on the domain. I kind of have a kind of a messy diagram here, so no one said I was good at making diagrams, but this is kind of just to explain the process of why it's so risky. Again, so you can see here. Sorry, one more second. Okay, so as you can see here, we have our diagram, and we're kind of taking advantage of the name service poisoning, the IPv6 issues, and we're forwarding all that. We're making all that traffic, and we're telling our victims connect to our relay server, which is again under the context of this attacker. The attacker is then able to take those authenticated sessions and push them to all of those targets on the domain. So instead of us having to crack the password, we're able to take these sessions and push them to multiple targets on the domain. So again, if it is an administrator account, I'm able to dump everyone's emails. I'm able to compromise the entire domain. In this instance, I would be able to essentially spread a ransomware attack. So people need to keep in mind that if a malicious actor, a malicious program is able to get on your network, the impact of them getting that initial foothold is going to be minimized a lot by reducing the name service poisoning, fixing IPv6, and then we kind of come into this NTLM relay issue. So if those two first issues are not fixed, an attacker is able to, convince those victims to come back and talk to the relay server, which we own, and then push those sessions to all the targets. So now I have an administrator. I can talk to every computer on the system. I'm able to spread the ransomware everywhere. So let's say I was able to pick up an authenticated session and it's just Bob Thomas. He's only able to access those 3 or 4 files. So he takes those 3 or 4 files. Okay, there's nothing in here. The attack's thwarted. Granted, if other best security practices are followed. If they are not, then the user is able to take this session and throw Thomas's authenticated session at these targets, but it doesn't really matter because he doesn't have the ability to access those targets. He's not privileged. So that's going to really, really mitigate the impacts of this issue. How to reduce the impact of this issue completely? You want to enforce SMB signing, which I'm going to pull up and give you a kind of an overview of right now. So SMB signing essentially just adds an extra layer of security and authentication mechanisms to every single connection. It's going to make it so even if an attacker was able to pick up one of these authenticated sessions and they try to connect to a system that has SMB signing enabled, they're not going to be able to do that. SMB signing checks that the session that is being forwarded is actually coming from who it says it is. So this is just adding another layer of security and makes it so that we're not able to pick up those sessions and then just throw them around the network at will, essentially. So as you're going about and you're looking at your network security and you're saying, okay, I've taken care of name service poisoning. I've disabled these insecure protocols. I've looked at IPv6. It's like, okay, it's not in use. We've applied the appropriate policies to make sure our devices are preferring IPv4 over IPv6. At that point, the NTLM relay attack becomes much less effective, but it is still available. So let's say the attacker was able to grab a plain text password via another avenue. They're able to throw that password at this relay server and then throw it at the other devices in the domain. So just keep in mind, that without signing, an attacker is able to push any authenticated session to those targets and live in the context of that user. As a good practice is to enforcing SMB signing, I would say on all privileged devices where privileged users are running, protected information, servers, Exchange servers, email servers, DHCP servers, DNS servers, anything that is very critical to your environment, you're going to want to enable SMB signing on. One thing to keep in mind about that is it does add, adding an extra layer of security also adds an extra layer of I wouldn't say network congestion, but it is going to be more stressful on the network if you do enable signing on every device. So I would suggest rolling out signing on only a few devices at a time, see how your network takes it, and kind of an end all be all, you really should be enforcing signing on those critical devices. So how is that accomplished? Much as I mentioned before, you can do that via group policy, via the registry. There's a couple different ways you can accomplish that. So what did we go over today? We kind of went over three common attack vectors that we take advantage of and utilize to compromise too many domains. These attacks have been around for too long for the state that they still are present in. So we've gone over those legacy protocols that can easily be turned off via group policy. We've gone over IPv6 and why it's an issue, and kind of which systems are affected by that. Again, Windows, Vista, and above. And then kind of the perfect storm of attacks, when someone's able to come in, leverage those legacy protocols, leverage IPv6, and then forward those authenticated sessions without cracking any passwords. They're able to gain access to systems, compromise the entire domain, spread ransomware, read your emails, really whatever they want to. That gives them full control of the domain if that's that perfect storm. So limiting the impact of these items, as I mentioned before, least privilege principles, enforcing strong passwords, and just having someone come in and take a look at these issues and say, did we configure this correctly? Having someone perform an internal penetration test, making sure that the people you have coming in testing these issues know how to test them. Some of these attacks and primitives and kill chains, so to say, not everyone hunts for these primitives like we do. So if you're able to communicate these to your teams, please do so. We here at Trace Security are really just trying to increase the security posture of the industry as a whole. Not just one client at a time. We will try to accomplish that, but mitigating these items are going to reduce the impact. So, as mentioned before, if any of y'all have any questions, you can definitely email me. I'll be more than happy to do some technical deep dives, and I love talking about those. And my email address is, as Marissa mentioned before, it's going to be evanr@tracesecurity.com. Please feel free to reach out. I love discussing these items, and I feel they're very, very important to securing an internal network properly. Again, my name is Evan Royer, and I really appreciate you guys tuning in today. I apologize for the technical difficulties, and I apologize if any of this information went over anyone's head, because it is a little complicated, it's a little deep, but they are very, very important. At minimum, go to your IT teams, tell them, have we taken care of name service poisoning? Have we looked at IPv6 abuse? And how are we preventing NTLM relay? Thank you, everyone, and I appreciate you tuning in. Have a good day.